Now, Stefan and Lauren, you worked together on the assignment for your urban geography course, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
I know you made a plan of what you were going to do before you went on the field trip. Did you stick to it?
More or less.
Okay, so where did you start?
Well, first of all, we selected one area of the city to work in. We decided on the centre.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked in detail at how it has been developed by doing a survey.
Yeah, we did that by walking round and dividing the area into different categories, such as residential, commercial and industrial, so we could record land use. We're going to find some maps from 50 years ago and from 100 years ago, so we can look at what has changed.
Good. So that gives you a foundation. Then what did you do?
I was interested in looking at how polluted the city was.
I thought that was too general a topic and would be difficult to check. But Stefan persuaded me, and actually it was quite interesting because before we started, we assumed that a lot of the pollution problems would be caused by industry.
In fact, most of the industrial development has been on the outskirts.
Oh.
And most pollution is caused by the traffic which passes through the city centre every day.
Right.
There are 5 major road junctions around the edge of the city, so we set up equipment to check the air quality on each of those 3 times on one day.
In the morning and evening, which is when most journeys are made in and out of the city, and at 2:30 in the afternoon.
On the same day, we went to the 2 busiest junctions in the morning and evening to calculate the traffic flow into the city.
Right.
We'll be able to produce some graphs from the figures we collected.
Yeah.
Presumably you then looked at where all these cars ended up.
I thought we should look at why people were coming into the city, whether it was for employment or education or leisure activities. But Stefan thought that would be too difficult.
Because most people were in cars, it would be hard to ask them.
Yeah.
So we decided to spend an afternoon examining the parking facilities available instead. We established the capacity of each car park, and we spent an afternoon counting cars in and out, so we have an idea of how long people spend in the city centre.
So, do you have evidence that most journeys are made by car within the city centre?
We checked local government statistics to see if that was true, but they were inconclusive.
Everything is quite close together in the city centre, and there are wide pavements, so you would expect people to walk from one place to another.
So we chose a number of locations and we noted how many pedestrians passed a particular spot.
How did you choose where to do that?
We stood at 2 places in the business district. One in the shopping area, and the other was in an area where there are more tourists.
Right.
I thought it was really important to talk to people, so we carried out a survey on how people usually travelled into the city. We asked them about their usual means of transport.
We found out that it varied according to why people were travelling. If they were employed in the city, they wanted to get there quickly, but if they were coming in for their leisure time, they didn't mind using the bus.
That's all we had time for while we were there.
Okay. So, shall we talk about what you're going to do next and how you're going to divide the tasks up? How are you going to present the data you've got?
Well, some of the information can be presented as graphs or maps.
I'm quite good at the software.
You'd better do that then, Lauren. I'll help you check all the statistics before you start.
Okay.
It's good to present as much as you can visually. Is there anything else you can use as visuals?
We've got a lot of photographs which we can go through.
We both took them, so some will be duplicated. It's going to take ages to go through them all. Maybe one of us should just choose some.
It's better if you collaborate. That way you'll end up with the best of what you've got.
That's fine. We'll do that.
And when the graphs and maps are done, you'll need to write a report, an analysis of the data. Will you do that together?
I think that should be my responsibility if we're going to share the work out evenly. I can use some of Lauren's notes as well as my own.
OK. And finally, you'll be presenting your project to the rest of the group in a couple of weeks' time.
We thought it'd be better for Stefan to do that, as he's got more experience at that kind of thing.
I would prefer to have input from both of you, as I have to do an assessment.
Oh.
We'll take turns then. We'll divide it into sections and talk about a few things each.
Good. You'll find it easier, Lauren, than doing a presentation on your own. Well, if you need to ask me any more questions while you're working on this, email me. I look forward to seeing what you produce.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming to this series of talks. Before I talk in detail about the experiments and innovations of the British ceramicists, I'd like to give you a summary of the social and manufacturing background in which they lived and worked. So, we're talking about England, or more specifically, the region known as the Midlands, and we need to go back mainly to the 18th century and briefly even earlier to put it in a global context. Now, at that period, the majority of the population, whatever their station in life, as you might say, were dependent for their living, in one way or another, not on the geographical location of where they lived, but on the physical characteristics of the actual land they lived on. This is true whether we're talking about the aristocracy, the owners of great estates who incidentally had no snobbery about the concept of making money from all the reserves of coal or timber or stone on their rolling acres, or the farmers making a fat living from the rich soils. And besides these groups, and the less affluent ones, the deposits of iron ore and lead, the limestone and flint, and the brown and yellow clays also sustained the numerous industries in the area. It's important to recognise that it was already an industrial region and had been so for centuries. There were many Midland trades, some of them indigenous, some of them not. For example, there were immigrants from France who came as early as the late 16th century, and they were producers of glass. A century later, there is plenty of evidence that the variety of trades was enormous. There was brewing in Burton-on-Trent, silk weaving and ribbon making near Coventry, framework knitting around Nottingham, and of course in Cheshire men dug the salt, as we still do nowadays even, which in that era was sent downriver to the estuary of the Mersey. Now, among these well-established trades, one of the oldest of the local crafts was pottery. As you will probably be aware, ceramics has always been a mix of science, design and skill. And a good potter is, in a sense, an experimental chemist, trying out new mixes and glazes and needing to be alert to the impact of changes of temperature on different types of clay. For 200 years, up to the time we are concerned with, potters had been making butter pots and pitchers and patterned plates, using the clay which was plentiful in the area where they lived, in a handful of North Staffordshire villages dotted along the low hills. Now I want to explain a little about the industrial processes which had preceded the great breakthrough in Germany in 1708. That's when the formula for porcelain was discovered, a secret that had been held in China for 1,000 years. In the Midlands, in England as elsewhere, there had basically been two kinds of pottery. The first is still known as earthenware. Now, This was a bit rough and ready, but it was deservedly popular for several reasons. To start with, it was relatively cheap, so it could be used by most households. This was because it could be made from local clay without any complicated processing or added materials. From the potter's point of view, there was another reason for its cheapness. This was that it could be fired in simple ovens or kilns and at relatively low temperatures, so he didn't have to spend so much money on fuel to achieve the necessary heat. On the other hand, after one firing in the kiln, the problem with earthenware was that it remained porous, so had limited usefulness. So for most purposes, it had to go back in the kiln for a second firing before it became waterproof. And another thing was that it was extremely breakable. I mean, before it had even been sold. I suppose the potter wouldn't have minded so much if people just had to keep coming back for more every time they broke a jug or whatever. But it was very inconvenient because it meant there was a lot of wastage in the course of the manufacturing process. Anyway, for all these reasons, if people could afford it, and that would be all but the very poor, they would buy stoneware, a much tougher product. Now, for this, the potter used a slightly more expensive raw material, which was made by combining clay and flint, and this mixture was fired at a far higher heat, with the result that the ingredients vitrified. That is to say, in effect, the whole thing became glassy. And because of this, it was non-porous, and naturally this was regarded as a great advance. Well, that's the situation in the 18th century. Are there any questions at this stage? Okay, so now we can go on to look at the age of innovation.
Hello, how can I help you?
Hi, I'm Carlton Mackay, and you booked me some flights recently to Australia and some internal ones?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mackay. I remember you now, of course.
Well, I find I'm going to need car hire while I'm in Sydney after all. I think you said you could recommend a good value company?
Yes, that's right. Cost-wise cars. They're very good and don't charge lots of extras. They have 3 offices in the Sydney area, including one office right at the airport.
So I'll just book it online?
Yes, you can book online, but you should have their phone number too, just in case.
Of course.
That's 1800 705 639. It's on the website, and you can get a discount if you quote your booking reference from us.
Oh, what's that?
I mean the one you got from me when we booked your flights. I have it here. 743002.
Oh, thanks. I guess I've got it at home, but I'll write it down again in case. A discount is good. So, where exactly is the office? I'll be coming to the domestic terminal from Melbourne.
It's immediately outside the international terminal.
Okay. And another thing I want to check is, will they be open when I arrive, or is it just office hours?
Well, they open at 7:15 and close at 6:15 in the evening. So let's see. You're due to land at 6:10. By the time you've collected your bags and so on, which will take a little while, they won't be open. But if you arrange it in advance, they can wait for you. You do have to pay an extra $30 for that, though.
Okay. Well, I'm staying near the airport the first night, so I could go back in the morning and save a day's hire?
Yes, that'd be better. That'd save you about $50.
Do you know what kind of cars they have?
Quite a variety, I think. The best value should be under $60 a day with luck. That would be the Echo, I guess.
Sorry?
ECHO. Like when your voice bounces back?
I suppose I have to book online before I leave?
That's the best way. They won't deduct any charges until you finish with the car, but they do need your credit card number when you book, and of course they'll want to see your driving licence when you collect. How long will you need it?
I'm in Sydney for 7 days. I'll only actually need to use it on 3 or 4 of those days, I hope, but I'll keep it for the whole week. I guess it's going to be a few $100s. Can you suggest anything I can do to keep the cost down?
Oh, you get quite a big discount if you do less than 1,000 kilometres in the week.
Oh, that's good. I don't suppose I will be driving that far, actually.
But, oh yes, the other thing I should mention is the insurance. It's included in the price.
Oh, that is good value then.
Yes, but what you must remember is that it doesn't cover anything except the car, so you must be careful not to leave anything at all in it when you park, because your luggage isn't insured, even if it's out of sight, locked in the boot.
Yeah, well, I think my travel policy will cover that, actually.
Good.
OK, and can I return the car outside office hours? My flight home is very early in the morning. Can I put the keys through the door or something?
There's a secure box just outside the office on the pavement. You just drop the keys in there.
Oh, good.
And one other thing, you should remember to buy petrol before you leave it. If you don't drop the car back with a full tank, you get charged to fill it. I recommend you go to a supermarket before you go out to the airport.
Thanks for the tip.
Not at all. Do call in again if there's anything else I can help with.
I will. Many thanks.